Okay, hi brothers and sisters. I'm just going to do a quick video for 8th Day Dawning. We're just going to discuss some of the riddles, mysteries in the Old Testament that we've discovered on my other channel, Ruth Abbey, and I thought we'd just recap some of them quick here for anybody who might pick up this channel and watch a quick 15-minute video. So right off the top, we'll just discuss them right off the top of my head. So probably the first one would be the key of David, that we discovered what that was. And what we realized was that, when you look out at this world, the one that you see in opposition to the key of David would be the key of Solomon. And indeed, that's exactly what it is in scriptures. When we get studying King Solomon, we realize that what actually took place was the daubing up of the gates in David, his father's wall, to prevent the key of David, which was the righteous daughters of Zion, from passing back and forth through the gates in the wall. And they were God's choice for holding the law of heaven in their mouth. We see Job say, I made a covenant with mine eyes, why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? And so what Solomon discovered was the covering of Judah. We're told that in Isaiah 22, which also links us to the key of David. And to him, actually, what he did is he changed the portion in the midst. We're told again in Micah 2, these are all passages that we use to piece our understanding together on the key of David, along with, I think it's 1 Kings chapter 11. And what we realized was that he daubed up the gateways that these daughters of Zion would pass back and forth through. And from there they would go in and teach the laws of heaven that would give us eternal life. And what King Solomon did was he determined to daub these walls, the breaches up. And what he did by taking harlot wives or wives from the surrounding Adamic nation, he changed the portion in the midst, the flock of Bozrah in the midst. That's what Micah 2. And it says they were as men at war coming against these women. And they were ripping the robe off, which is a symbol of her glory, gave to her by God. And it says the garment. So there may have been a lot more going on there. And we see him establishing the houses. He tore down houses. You see the women lamenting for their houses that had kicked them out. In Jeremiah chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, you read in through there and you'll see. And we see that Jeremiah laments and says, we have not healed the hurt of the daughter of the people. And God says that, you have not healed the hurt of the daughter of my people. And so we see that happening, and Solomon taking unto him many wives. And these wives were from the surrounding Adamic nations that already knew this law of Adam, which exalted man as God in the land. And that was never from God, that was from man. And so we see what's going on is the key of Solomon comes in total opposition against the key of David, though the key of Solomon is not actually mentioned, but that is actually what it is a reference to. When he took these harlot wives, and we see the allegory to Baal, exalting Baal himself in a sense in Isaiah 54, when you see more are the children of the desolate than a she who has a husband. So we discovered that. Number 2, we discovered what the serpents in the wilderness was. And again, it's an allegory to these women that Balaam told Balak to go get his women and to send them in to the men of Israel and seduce them and to take out the right hand of God, which was identified as the daughters of Zion, the glory. And Moses was her front man, and she used him to bring her word, her law, to the people because she had chosen them as her particular people. And you see again that reference in Deuteronomy 32 as well. And she is the rock, she is the shepherdess that was rejected. They did not want her word. You see Moses actually going against her as well when he strikes a rock the second time, when he was to speak kindly to it. And what that really showed us was that over the course of time, that the children of Israel themselves were eventually going to cast off a covenant with these righteous daughters of Zion. And God states, if you don't want a covenant with my righteous daughters, I'll cast them out into the lands of the Gentiles, and you won't have them. And we see that precisely happening. Again, we did a video on this. And but the women that was coming in with this lie on their tongue that they had already been taught by the nations that they dwelt in, that they came from, came into the tents of these men, it says, and they were seducing them, we assume. Certainly seducing them with another law, another lie, It tasted like honey on their tongue. It tickled their ears. It was cobra's venom in their stomach. It was really poisoning them. And then we see Moses is instructed to make a brass serpent and to raise it upon a pole. And that was a symbol of the daughters of Zion, who was being cast off by mankind at that time. And it's likened to the fiery seraphim, which is a fiery serpent when you go look the word seraphim up, which you will find in Isaiah 6. And so they were casting off a covenant with the righteous daughters of Zion again. So this is all the theme that seems to play out over time. And then we see, in a sense, that murderous intent that the men developed, which was about the contamination of the woman's seed. We discovered that in our allegories, and just through the simple actions that was going on when Phinehas, who was a son, I believe, of Aaron, went and struck the man of Israel and the Midianitish woman that he had brought into the camp, and he stuck them both through, but it specifies the woman through the belly. So it was about the contamination of the woman's seed, and we know Israel represented the woman's seed, Eve's seed, because she did not violate her covenant. Man chose to make a covenant. He split the pleasant land, is what is stated. And what that pleasant land was woman into two covenant, a harlot that would teach his lie, him as God, and really debase the feminine and defame her. And that's just what we see Adam is linked to the name Satan, the accuser, the name Baal, your husband who wants to be your Lord and ruler, who really shot at these daughters as they passed through the gates. We see that in Joseph's blessings because it's really concerning the birthright meaning the children belongs to her, the spirit of this covenant. They were to hearken to the laws of this covenant. The fathers were to walk in these laws as gave by these daughters that were gave in covenant. So again, you see that fiery serpent being raised on a pole in symbology as a casting down, the casting off, or the death even of these daughters, which then links us to a deeper understanding of who the sons of God were, who the sons of Zion were, and what the high priest breastplate actually represented, which was the gold that encrusted these precious stones, which are then called the holy ones of Israel, which is feminine, the daughters, the stones of Israel, the cornerstones rejected. And you find that in Lamentations 4, verse 1, when we see the sons of Zion, who were really representing the sons of God, because the daughters of Zion were known as the God on this earth, God's presence upon this earth. So they were God on this earth. Again, you can reference Job, I made a covenant with mine eyes, why then should I think upon a maid? For what portion of God is there from above? So he's saying his wife is a portion of God from above, which represents the spirit on this earth. And they went against the spirit of her covenant, and from the very beginning they did not want her. And we see them building up a harlot. Sorry, I just had a shower, so my hair's wet. And anyway, so you see that in Lamentations 4:1, when these sons of God, sons of Zion, are compared to gold. It says when they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, which was walking the laws of their mothers, which is really what you come to understand, that they were worth their weight in gold. And so you see the debasement of the statue in those dreams of Daniel coming straight down from gold, straight down to nothing more than clay. And we're told in Lamentations 4 that they became the value of no more than clay pots, these sons, who we are told murdered these precious stones, which is feminine, these gemstones, on the corners is your understanding. So you're getting blood libation, because the word libation is in there, but it takes you to the understanding that it was actually a blood libation that they were offering up, not one of water that would have been a great blessing to them through their mothers. They were actually murdering them, it looks like, on the corners. And so you see that in allegory to the altar and to the sacrifice of these daughters. So we see those connections. But then because of that, we see Moses having to part the Red Sea. And when you study the Red Sea or the Reed Sea, these waters flowed down through this marsh, this marsh that was full of reeds. And what you understand is as it came down and flowed down, it colored the water red, which should have been a clear water, and it salted it with a bitterness. So these become a bitter, salty water. So we looked at bitterness as well throughout some of the videos that I've done. And so Moses has to part those waters before the children can be birthed through out of the land of Egypt that was actually poisoning them and really using them harshly, putting them through very harsh treatment. And so what happened is really what we come to understand before we can be delivered from this lying theology, which is the foundation of our world that fed out from Mount Zion, where the harlot spirit came to be exalted with all these man-made religious lies and laws. They struck the law of bitter waters out because they found that it actually led to a healthier community. You find that law in Numbers 5 or 10, chapter 10. And so if these laws come from God, what right did they have to strike those laws out? So it ought to be telling us something. But before we can be birthed out and away from these laws of violence, and we're told that they were laws of violence that came to really suppress, and particularly the sisters, that sea has to be parted. And it is not blood that washes you, it is water. Christ was crucified because he would not walk the Torah Law. He was crucified under Roman law because he refused to walk in that path. He walked in the path of his mother, and that's why he was called the only begotten Son of God. So it is the water that washes you. Blood makes you guilty. In Isaiah 24, I believe you find the reasons why earth absolutely fell. Because we became so suppressed in such a violent, I guess in a sense, a country. Earth represents a country, in a sense. Became so violent under their man-made laws and what they began to perpetuate against their sisters and their children. And so those are some of the riddles, some of the dark sayings that we've managed to reason out, I guess, to study out in the scriptures, and to find indeed that tends to get repeated in a multitude of ways. And so those are just some of them. We've broke other mysteries down. I can't think of any right now, but those are 4 right off the top. So for anybody who's maybe interested in watching some on the other channel, those are some that we did manage to break down, and we did use scripture to do that. So I thank you for watching my videos. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth. Sorry about the wet hair. I hope y'all have a really nice day.